Good morning, everybody. If you'd like to say good morning and say where you're saying good morning from. If you can hear me loud and clearly. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Rima. Okay, good morning, Rima. Hello, good morning, Virginia. Thank you. Good morning from Paris. Hello, Elena. Wonderful. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Andrea Tolve, and I'm part of the professional learning and development team at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. And I'm saying good morning to everybody from Barcelona. Stephen's in Bali. Wow. So, good morning to everybody from Barcelona, Spain. So today, this session, Empowering Learners through CLIL, Building Autonomy in the Content Classroom. The overview of this session, what are we going to be looking at in today's webinar? Well, we're going to define what CLIL is. We're going to have an overview of what CLIL means and how it works. We're going to explore how CLIL works in the classroom. We're going to look at some key features and how it looks in practice. We're going to also see how it can support learner autonomy, how it can help our students become more independent. We're going to take a look at some examples of CLIL in practice and finish off by reflecting on the benefits of using CLIL. So it's quite ambitious for the next 45 minutes. And during this webinar, I am going to be asking you questions to get you thinking too. I might not be able to respond to all of you, but I can see your comments, and it's great for me to get all of your input as well. So I'm going to begin with a quiz. A CLIL quiz, okay? So in this quiz, there are 5 questions, and after each question, I'd like you to type your answers in the chat box. Okay, so you ready? The first question, what does the acronym CLIL stand for? We know that in English language teaching, there are lots of acronyms. What does the acronym stand for? I'd like to pop your answers in the chat. Stephen, content, language, and integrated learning. Yes, indeed. Content and language integrating learning. Wonderful. And what does that actually mean? Thank you, Oliver. Yes. What does that mean? So here comes the second question. Which sentence best defines CLIL? A, it's a subject matter which determines the language needed to learn. B, language is the most important factor and content is fitted around it. Or C, language and content have the same importance. Question 2. Hello, Christina from Lille. Hello, Sada. So Stephen says A. Rima says A. Everybody saying A? Audrey A. Hello, Nahid. Okay, so we've got some others. Anai says C. Blondine says C. Okay, well, the answer is C. Language and content have the same importance. Let's just take a quick look at a definition. According to the European Commission, content and language integrated learning is which pupils learn a subject through the medium of a foreign language. But I think that this definition doesn't really tell us to what extent or what level pupils learn a subject. So I'm going to share another definition, and this definition is by David Marsh, who actually coined the term CLIL. So he says, CLIL refers to situations where subjects or parts of subjects are taught through a foreign language with dual focused aims, namely the learning of content and the simultaneous learning of a foreign language. So I think this definition is useful for us because it really does highlight that the educational intention inherent in CLIL is that it's both dual focused, both content and language. But I sometimes think, and maybe you agree with me, that the problem with lots of definitions, especially in education, is that they are rather abstract. They're not so practical. So for us as teachers, it can be sometimes hard to imagine how that actually looks like in the classroom. So, and we'll have a look at some examples a little bit later on. So that was question 2. Ready for question 3? Question 3. Which approaches does CLIL draw on more? Lexical, communicative, humanistic, or content-based teaching? A, B, C, or D? So Alexander says D, B, we've got a mix. Maybe more than one. It might be more than one. Natalie says C, D, A and D. Okay, yeah. So yes, I just saw somebody said all of them. That went so quick. Yes, all of them, all of them. So let's take a look at some CLIL principles. Here on the screen, I'm going to show on the screen, you've got 3 sentences. And the first sentence, I've given you the first letters. The first sentence, language is used to as well as. What do you think those 2 key words are that I've covered up? Language is used to, starts with an L, as well as learn and communicate. Thank you, Melody. Exactly. Language is used to learn as well as communicate. So this really reflects a communicative approach. So our learners use language meaningfully and with purpose. So they're engaging in real communication to explore content. So they're not just doing language exercises. They're using the language, maybe English or whatever the focus of the language is, to think, reason, and express ideas. What about sentence number 2? Yes, Nadej, exactly. The subject determines the language input. So this kind of links both to a lexical approach and a content-based teaching. So in CLIL, the vocabulary and the structures are drawn directly from the subject. So if we're thinking about a science lesson in English, so a science lesson would bring in a vocabulary like evaporation, condensation, photosynthesis. And then our students would need to use functional phrases like this means that, or as a result. So it's really emphasizing chunks of language, not just the grammar rules. And the third sentence, the focus is not, yes, you're getting great, Stephen, yes, interlinked. The focus is not only on language, not only on content, each is interlinked. So CLIL recognises that learners, they need to feel connected and engaged in the classroom, but when language and content are taught together in relevant and motivating contents, it can lead to a deeper learning. So CLIL isn't a method in itself, but it's this rich approach. It draws from these different approaches, different methodologies, really making it very learner-centered. Question number 4, ready? What is seen as secondary? A, accuracy, or B, fluency? Steve, A, accuracy, A, B. We've got a mix here. Seen as secondary. So what is seen as not so important? Accuracy. So yes, correct, Isa. Now here A, exactly, is accuracy is seen as secondary. One of the key principles in CLIL is that fluency is more important than accuracy. Just the nature of CLIL lessons means that our students will be exposed to and produce a range of language. So the focus is firmly on communication. And then the accuracy comes with time. We all know that making mistakes is part of the natural process in language learning. But language doesn't have to be accurate to be communicative. And CLIL is exposing learners to situations in the classroom which calls for genuine communication. So the focus is on communication. Question number 5, the last question in the CLIL quiz. What are the 4 C's which underpin CLIL? So the 4 C's framework which underpins CLIL are represented, I've represented them here, in 4 pictures. Can you guess what they are? This framework Maybe some of you have heard of Do Coyle. She developed this framework back in 1999. So this is original 4Cs framework. So the top left-hand corner, what do you think that represents? There's 4 pictures, and each start content. Thank you, Frederic. Content. Melody says content. Yes, the first one is content. Not quite construction. Melanie, nearly, not quite construction, nearly, it's cognition, but you've definitely got the third one, which is communication, and the fourth one's actually culture. So these were the 4 C's colors. Thank you, Frederic. These are the 4 C's framework which underpin CLIL, and these were developed at the end of the 90s, 1999, by Do Coyle. So what does these each C mean? So, well, the first C, we said, stands for content. So this is the subject matter. It could be science, it could be history, maths, art. And in CLIL, we know that learners are not just learning a language, they're learning real, meaningful content in another language. The second C, cognition. What do we mean by cognition? It's all about the thinking and the learning processes that help our learners to engage with and make sense of the content. They're not just receiving information, they're expected to think about it, apply it, question it, and use it to either solve problems or to create something new. So these thinking skills are really helping them to develop both subject understanding and greater autonomy. Third C was communication. So what does this focus on? Language learning and language use. So in a CLIL lesson, the learners need the language to access the content. They need the language to be able to express their ideas, to ask questions, to be able to interact with each other in class, plan for language learning as well, and that happens alongside learning the subject. So if we think about language of learning, that's the key vocabulary and structures. The language for learning, which are the phrases that they would need to work in groups, to ask for help, and the language through learning. So this is the new language that would naturally emerge as they're learning and about the subject and engaging with the tasks. So it's not, reminding us that it's not just about using language correctly, it's about using it purposefully to communicate, to support thinking and collaborate. And the 4th C is culture. So it's the one that really gives a CLIL that real depth. So they're exposed not to just new content and language, but to different perspectives, values, different ways of thinking. So it helps them develop intercultural understanding, be open and be exposed to diversity, making connections between their own context and the wider world. So this way, CLIL can help support, develop global citizenship. So far, what have we done? We've defined CLIL, we've explored CLIL principles, and we've identified the 4 C's of CLIL. So now let's think about what it looks like in the classroom. And I think as language teachers, we're all language teachers here, we may integrate some content and language into our lessons. In my experience as a teacher, my classes had a very light version of CLIL. So the emphasis of my lessons were predominantly language focused. However, some of you here today, some of you may have more emphasis of content in your classes. And around the world, there are many different CLIL models. But so let's have a think, what can CLIL look like in the classroom? Thinking about CLIL in classes, what type of language is needed? So I want us to pause, and reflect on the types of questions that you ask in your classes, how they can either encourage or limit autonomy. So the first question I'd like you to reflect upon, what types of questions do we ask and who asks them? Are most of our questions closed, like yes or no? Are they factual recall? Are we just asking our students to recall facts? Are they led by us? Are the questions led by us in the classroom, or are we asking our learners to ask questions too? How do our questions guide or limit student thinking? So sometimes our questions do the actual thinking for the student. So if we're always, for example, if we ask them, what's the capital of France? What is the definition of evaporation? We're asking them to simply recall facts, yeah? We're not asking them to explore. So what happens if we start asking them questions like, why do you think Paris became the capital of France? What would happen if a desert got heavy rainfall over several months? So just with those two questions, we're already asking our learners to analyze, to evaluate, to imagine. The third question I want you to think about, what kind of answers show our learners are thinking independently? So what signals are we looking for in our learners? What are we looking for that shows our learners are actually making connections, or they're giving opinions rather than just repeating? Last question, and for me, this is one of the most important questions. Do we give students enough time and tools to formulate their own responses? How much time do we give our students before we expect an answer from them? In my teaching career, it happened about 10 years ago. I got one of my classes I needed, it was video recorded to be teaching to be evaluated. And I remember when I watched myself asking my students questions, I always thought that I was giving them enough time to answer. And just from watching myself, I thought, no, I'm not giving my students enough time to answer. And if we really want them to respond to more demanding questions, we need to give them that more time to allow them to think. So we need to think what kind of questions we're asking our students and how much time are we allowing them or giving them in order for them to think and be able to respond to those questions. So we're going to now explore, linking to this, we're going to explore Bloom's revised taxonomy. It's a framework which can help us take this even further, which many of you may already know Bloom's revised taxonomy. So this is a great way for us to help us think about the language we're using and how we're using it in the classroom with our students. So you can see there are 6 levels. Do you know what thinking skills are at each level? Do you want to pop in the chat box? Does anybody know what are the thinking skills of each level of Bloom's revised taxonomy? Charlotte says no. Does anybody else know? Thank you for sharing, Charlotte. Nope, nobody, no. Okay, so got the 6 levels. Okay, no, it's great, fine. So we have, fabulous, thank you for sharing. We have remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So it's arranged, these 6 levels of thinking are arranged as a hierarchy. So you have like remembering, understanding, are more simpler, and at the top you've got evaluating and creating. So at the bottom 3 levels, remembering, understanding, and applying, they're often called, you might have heard this or read it somewhere, LOTS, lower order thinking skills. So these might include things like remembering, recalling vocabulary, or summarizing a story. So students have read a story, they have to summarize it. That would be a lower order thinking skill. Or following a set of instructions, for example, in a science experiment. If they have to follow those set of instructions, that would be a lower order thinking skill. And as we move up the pyramid, we get to the HOTS, the higher order thinking skills. So these are analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So these levels require learners to go beyond just basic understanding. They have to use knowledge in a more independent, critical and creative ways. So HOTS Questions which explore understanding and require deeper thinking will need more time. So I think it's important to say that this model is hierarchical, and all of these skills, all of them matter, from the lower order skills, from remembering, understanding, applying, all the way up to analyzing, evaluating, and creating. They all matter, but it gives us a wonderful opportunity to use and think, how can we develop them? So if we're thinking about these Bloom's revised taxonomy, and we look at it from an autonomous lens, thinking, how can we think about these from an autonomous lens? And what does it mean to support learner autonomy at each level of thinking? How can we build in this learner autonomy? And it's all about choices that we build in, and the strategies we teach. So I've got another task for you here. So we've got 6 classroom questions here on the left side of the screen, okay? What I'd like you to try and do is match each classroom question to one level of Bloom's revised taxonomy. And if you can see on Bloom's revised taxonomy on the right, I've added letters. So you can just say 3A, 2D, yeah? So, oh, Stephen's already said 1C, okay. Hey, if you want to put them all at once as well, maybe. 2A, yes, Frederick, Virginia. 1C, yes, Ord, sorry, Stephen, yes. Yes, well done. Yes, Karim, 6E, yes. So that leaves one more. I think there's, give you just a couple more. 3B, yes, excellent. Well done. Yes, so here they are. Thank you. Yes. Can you recall the key facts? Exactly. We're just asking them to remember. Can you explain that in your own words? So now they have to understand what they've learned. How would you use this idea in a different subject? So now we're asking them to apply the knowledge. Number 4 is with analyze. What patterns or connections do you notice? So applying, analyzing. What would you change and why? They're evaluating. And at the top, creating. What could you design to show this idea in action? So with questions, we can invite students to think more deeply and take more control of their learning. So when we're inviting them to the HOTS, when we're inviting them to apply, analyze, evaluate, or create, we're also encouraging them to make the decisions, expressing their opinions, and bringing it, their own thinking into the classroom with the task, which are all key ingredients of learner autonomy. I'm going to ask you to pause again and reflect. Maybe think about the very last lesson you taught, okay? And I'm going to show you 3 questions. What kinds of thinking, think about the last lesson you taught. So what kinds of thinking did your questions encourage? Were they mostly about checking knowledge? Did you challenge your students to give opinions or explain why something matters? Who usually asks the questions, you or your students? Now, so in your last lesson, who was asking most of the questions? And if you think about that, if we think about who's asking most of the questions, what does that tell us about who is in control of the learning? And the last question, how often do students generate their own questions? So do we encourage our students to wonder, to challenge, to ask why? Or are we as teachers in the classroom doing most of the questions? I know as teachers, we become question machines, but it's really important for us to reflect and see how our questioning can either guide learning, open it up for our students, and working to help build our students to be more autonomous and learner-centered. So let's have a think now about how we can actually help our learners generate their own questions. So we've reflected on what kinds of questions we ask as teachers and how we could actually help guide their thinking. But if we really want to empower them, we need to help and build this autonomy. We need to help them start asking their own questions. And that's really where the real ownership happens. So here are some examples. These are simple questions that we could stick up on the classroom. You've got questions, you've got question stems. You could post this in the classroom. Use them. They could have them with them when they're working in group work or pair work, and to get them thinking about what questions. Not for them to use it, but get them thinking. What do I already know about this? Is there another way to look at this? What do I need to find out? How can I check if I'm right? I wonder why. Could it be that? So the idea of this is to get them thinking and stimulate them to ask more questions. And this is a huge step towards learner autonomy. And another support we could use with our students is this idea. Maybe you've used this with your students already, this idea of a question grid. Sometimes it's called a question matrix, and it can be a really powerful tool for promoting student-generated questions. So it basically works by combining different question words down the left side with different auxiliary verbs, as you can see across the top, to help them form a wider variety of questions from just the simple factual ones. So questions they could generate, of course, depending on the subject. What is a volcano? How did the experiment work? What might happen if bees disappear, for example? So it's a nice support that we could use with our students. Why use it? Well, it can help students ask their own questions. They're not only engaging with content, they're only engaging with it, but we're helping them take ownership of their own learning process. It also supports self-directed learning through student-generated questions. It builds that metacognition, helping learners reflect on what they want to know and how to go about finding it. And of course, it's giving them the choice. We are giving them the choice for what questions they want to be asking. And we know that in the classroom, if we include choice, it immediately works towards increasing motivation and engagement. So question grids, using it in class. When could we use it? Just a little bit, some ideas here. We could use it before a topic. Ask them, for example, say to students, I want you to generate 3 to 5 questions that you would like to explore using the grid. You could do it after a reading or a listening. So you could then ask your students in pairs using this grid, create comprehension or discussion questions for each other. So they're generated questions to ask the rest of the class. And the third idea is to support, of course, as we mentioned, language development. So for lower levels, we could use this to highlight or pre-teach specific question stems as well. So what is, where can, why might. So it can also provide support for those lower levels. Again, you could maybe post it on the wall, or you could have it hand it out to your students so they can have it as a reference, and they can naturally start bringing it with them to class, and that's helping them take control of their own learning. So let's have a look at another idea, KWL charts. Back over to you, because I've been talking a lot and I need to take a little sip of water. What does KWL stand for? Anybody? What does a KWL chart? What does it stand for? No wonder learn, nearly, yeah, I like that. No wonder learn. Yes, Audrey. Yeah, so it's simple again, but a really powerful tool. Want to know, want to learn. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Frederick. Yes. So it stands for what I know, what I want to know, and what I learnt. Okay. But as it was already mentioned, Audrey said, you know, what I know, what I wonder, same thing on what I want to know, what I wonder about the subject, and what I learned. So it can be used with any topic or subject area. I'm going to show you with this example. This is a CLIL lesson that looks at desert survival. So before reading or exploring this text on desert survival, we could ask our students to complete the first column. So they might it activates background knowledge. So they could put into in the first column what they know. So they would know that deserts are hot. You can get sunburnt, for example. And then we ask them, okay, that's what you know. Now, in the next column, we want you to put, what do you want to know? So this is developing this purpose or giving them a reason to read. So they might put questions like, what animals live in the desert? What should I do if I get lost? So these questions, again, we're asking them to generate these questions. What do they want to find out? What do they wonder about the desert? And then after they've read it, so then we ask them, okay, now you read the text. They read the text. They go back to their KWL chart and they include points what they've learned. So for example, from this text, they would learn that scorpions live under rocks, that you need salt tablets to avoid heat cramps, for example. And this is helping them reflect, and it's consolidating their learning. So even with a very short text like this, you can use KW charts, which really promotes that thinking, questioning, and reflection. These are three things that are key in building learner autonomy. And you can, I've shown you here an example with a text, but you can do it also with a listening as well. It doesn't only have to be done with reading text. It can also be done with listening texts as well. So we've talked about thinking, questioning, and building autonomy through CLIL, but really taking ownership. We know that our learners also need to stop and take time to reflect. The KWL chart gives them that opportunity to reflect on what they've learned. But in this final part of the webinar, we're going to look at 6 simple ways to build self-reflection into your lessons. Maybe some of you are already doing this, but it's ways to help students recognize their progress and take more control of their learning. So the first one, understanding expectations, clarifying what success looks like before the task begins. So using model answers or rubrics, or a waggle, what a good one looks like. So examples. So what would this look like? So here, this is a lesson. This is from primary. Students are learning about renewable energy. And in this task, they have to write a short advert. So what would a waggle look like? Well, here we have on the page, they have what a good one looks like. As an example, so this model is helping learners understand the content. So it's helping them understand what renewable energy is and why it's good. And the language, so here we've got short sentences, it's a positive tone, it's got persuasive language, and the purpose is to advertise something. Yeah? So you can highlight features from this what a good one looks like from this model, from this example, and then we are building their confidence, their autonomy, in order for them to produce their own. So we're giving them that example of what is expected, what does it look like. So that's one way that we can definitely build in ownership and evaluation in the classroom. And the second one, practicing reflection regularly. Make it a reflection, a routine, not just a one-off. End every CLIL lesson with a chance to reflect on progress. Reflection isn't just for the end of a term or the end of a project. It needs to happen little and often for it to become meaningful. We know if we just do it very sporadically in our lessons, it won't carry so much meaning. Little and often. And if learners expect to reflect, they're more likely to engage with it. So it could be a simple question at the end of a lesson. It might be just a simple question at the end of a lesson. Say, okay, I'm going to give you 5-10 minutes. Write down, what did you learn today? So answer these questions. What did I learn today? What did I find challenging? Or it could be write down at least 2 things that you want to remember from today's lesson. And this helps build awareness and autonomy over time. We could also use a simple assessment tool that you could use with students. This could be used after they've worked with a group, helps them reflect on their participation as well in this example. So asking them to reflect on how they've worked with their students, with their colleagues in the classroom. How did they do it? And this uses, of course, using smileys. We know it's a great and learner-friendly criteria and visual scale. But this example I've shown you, you can easily adapt for your specific class or focus of what you want them to reflect on. So it's very easily adaptable. And then number 3, using tools like checklists and scales that can really help guide our learners in evaluating their own performance. Do any of you use visual traffic light systems in your class? Do you want to pop in the chat box? Do you use traffic light systems or smiley face scales or anything like this with your students? Charlotte said she doesn't know. Okay. Oh, Anna, you used to. Oh no, why did you stop? Nigel says no. Amanda says yes. Okay, so traffic light system. It's like stickers for the younger learners. Definitely, they love stickers. Using a traffic light system, for example, this example is taken from our Cambridge Life Competencies Framework activity cards, which I believe my colleagues are going to actually, thank you, Julian. He put it in the chat now for you to put into the chat box. So the traffic light system is, you could easily cut out circles of green, yellow, and red card, and they all have their cards. And you explaining to them that each like a traffic light. So green is saying that yes, I'm okay, I don't need help. Yellow means I need help, but I can do a different part of the task. And red says I need help with this task, and I know I can't do any more without help. So this is fantastic. You have all your students, they have their red, yellow, and green card. I mean, it says circles, but it doesn't have to be circle. It can just be a card, a square card. And you can ask a question, so are you ready to finish the task? Do you need help? And they hold up whether it's green, yellow, and red. And as a teacher, you can see immediately which students need more support. And if you have some students, a few of your stronger students that are showing a green card, but a lot of them, other students are showing a red or a yellow, what you could do is say, okay, you could go over to the students that are showing the green card, and you could say to them, why don't you go and provide support to your colleagues that are showing a yellow or red card. So this is a really great tool that you can use with young learners, teenage learners, and older learners. It's very, very versatile. You can also use it. I know this example is with a specific task. You can also use it to find out how your students are feeling. So at the beginning of the lesson, you could say to your students, okay, how ready are you to learn today? And they can put up your card. So they put up their card. So you as a teacher, right at the beginning, we know, okay, how are my students at the beginning of the class today? What do I need? Do they need a little bit of support or help to get ready for learning? So Lydia is saying most of my classes are one-to-one online classes with adults. Well, no, this system's not for one-to-one. You can you can just ask them. You could just ask them. No, this is for groups, in group classes. Exactly. Yeah. One-to-one, you would just say, "Do you need help?" No, this is when you're dealing with larger classes. This is a great tool to help you manage that. So the next one, task-aware reflection. So some reflection stems fit all tasks. Others should match the learning goal. So what strategy, for example, what strategy helped me solve the problem? How clearly did I explain my opinion? So with some questions, they can fit all subjects. However, others, you need a little bit of tailoring reflection, needs a bit more focused, it needs to be more focused and meaningful. How can we support our students by giving them clear focus checklists? This is an example. This focus is on an example helping them reflect on their use of language during a presentation, so can they understand what's expected. Okay, so this is a presentation checklist that they can use to help them with their presentation. This is just an example. You can use this and you can adapt this. This could be a checklist that you could adapt. If you are specifically teaching a content, you can easily adapt these questions linking to the task that your students need to carry out, or have carried out, I should say. And you can just add the columns, yes, no, or a comment. From guided to independent. So here's gradually reducing that support that we provide our students. Start with sentence answers, then move to open prompts. What would I do differently next time? So as they gain confidence, we can gradually reduce the support and move towards more open-ended questions. So this again helps the students to move from supported reflection to more independence. And the last one, tracking progress, helping students monitor their growth over time. So maybe you could use reflection journals or portfolios where learners can revisit post tasks and note down improvements. So they can feel they really have that sense of improvement, and it's a great way to build motivation and ownership. So as we're coming to the end, just the benefits of CLIL. CLIL improves language competence and oral communication skills. In the CLIL classroom, students use that language with a purpose, to learn, to solve problems, to communicate ideas. It's about real communication in action. It provides authentic and motivating use of language. They have to engage with language in meaningful, relevant contexts. It promotes cognitive flexibility. They have to switch between language and disciplines, and the content. It helps them think in a more flexible, creative way, induces a wider cultural context. What do I mean by that? Well, through CLIL, learners are encountering those new perspectives, values, and global issues. It prepares for future studies and working life. So it helps students prepare for the future and increases motivation and confidence in the language and the subject. So what we're doing something meaningful with the language, they feel more capable and more motivated to keep learning. So while CLIL helps us to teach more effectively, it also is about shaping the learners and citizens we want for tomorrow. So we're coming to the end. I'd like to share with you, this is a great post. It's by my colleague, Alan Davenport. My colleague has just put it in the chat. I've also got a QR code here for them to have I do encourage you to read. He looks at a lot of the things that we talked about in today's webinar, what did we do today? We defined what CLIL is, explored how CLIL works in the classroom, seen how it supports learner autonomy, looked at examples of CLIL in practice, and reflected very briefly on the benefits of using CLIL. And with 1 minute that we got left, and if we don't have time, do choose one question to reflect on, or take these questions with you today, okay? So what idea would you take from today, like to try out in your classroom? What small change could you make to help students take more ownership? Thank you, Anat. Thank you, Stephen. And which part of today's webinar connected most with your current teaching context? So do think about, what are you going to take away from these 45 minutes? Maybe make a note to yourself. I really hope that you've, thank you for being so interactive in the chat, that you've enjoyed today. Thank you, Nahid. Thank you, Audrey. And I do believe it's time for me to say thank you. And if you're interested in joining other sessions, we have now Developing Your Skills as a Language Teacher with George Wilson, the British Council. So thank you all. Thank you, Emmanuel. I don't know if we had any questions. I'm sorry if there are any questions I haven't answered. But yes, so I hope you found it useful. So thank you very much.